US President Barack Obama says he understands the dramatic judgment passed by the voters at yesterday's midterm elections in America. As the polls predicted, Republicans won control of the House of Representatives in Congress on a wave of voter discontent over the economy and a perception that the president was out of touch. The Republican gains are seen above all else as a victory for the Tea Party movement, and it now seems likely that American politics will become even more polarised than it has been already this year. North America correspondent Michael Brissenden reports from Washington.
And there he is, Senator-elect Rand Paul of Kentucky.
In America these days, they talk about politics moving in waves. And last night, the wave came in a tannin-stained surge of anger and frustration.
But tonight, there's a Tea Party tidal wave, and we're sending a message to them.
Across the country, candidates backed by the nascent Tea Party movement helped deliver Republicans the biggest margin for any party in the House of Representatives in more than 50 years.
We are humbled by the trust that the American people have placed in us. And we recognize this is a time for us to roll up our sleeves and go to work on the people's priorities, creating jobs, cutting spending, and reforming the way Congress does its business.
And Tea Party exuberance aside, humble seemed to be the default emotion for all the main party leaders.
You know, some election nights are more fun than others. Some are exhilarating, some are humbling. But every election, regardless of who wins and who loses, is a reminder that in our democracy, power rests not with those of us in elected office, but with the people we have the privilege to serve.
In a midterm congressional election, the president isn't on the ballot, but inevitably it becomes a referendum on the performance of the occupant of the Oval Office. And with unemployment still hovering at around 10%, a depressed real estate market and a ballooning deficit, this president says he understands why the judgment may have been harsh.
There is no doubt that people's number one concern is the economy. And what they were expressing great frustration about is the fact that we haven't made enough progress on the economy. We've stabilized the economy. We've got job growth in the private sectors. But people all across America aren't feeling that progress.
He was a man who was wounded out there today.
Yeah.
Chastened, tired, almost listless at times.
Megan, he blew the first year and a half of his presidency focused elsewhere.
When you get your butt kicked, you know what? You got your butt kicked.
The pundits have passed their verdicts and the political ground has shifted, but Barack Obama's overall defence of his policy settings hasn't. The stimulus and the bailouts he maintains were necessary to rescue an economy in freefall. Still, a political hammering like this is enough to give anyone pause for reflection.
I'm not recommending for every future president that they take a shellacking like I did last night. I'm sure there are easier ways to learn these lessons. But, I think it's important to point out as well that, a couple of great communicators, Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, were standing at this podium 2 years into their presidency, getting very similar questions.
The Clinton experience tells us that the first few months for Barack Obama will not be good. It's very tough to take a loss of this size, but he'll have to find a way to explain that he understood the election, but also a way to fight back against Republicans.
Whether they lean to the left or the right, political analysts and commentators here all seem to agree that the Clinton example is particularly instructive. Like him, the second half of Barack Obama's term will look very different from the first.
You did see that. You saw that with President Clinton when he had a similar loss in 1994. The big ideas of the first 2 years gave way to some very small ideas. To the extent that he wants to work with Republicans, it's going to have to be on some relatively minor issues.
Like Bill Clinton in 1994, Barack Obama will be looking to turn the inevitable confrontation with Congress to his political advantage. Back then, Republicans used their majority to literally shut down the government, and Democrats are hoping that the new Tea Party insurgents will force the Republicans to overreach again. And legislative gridlock is now all but certain. The President talks of compromise, but says he's prepared to defend the integrity of contentious policy positions like healthcare and the repeal of the Bush tax cuts for the wealthy. But Republicans say the message from the people is clear.
I think what the American people were saying yesterday is that they appreciated us saying no to the things that the American people indicated they were not in favor of. So I think the group that should hopefully get the message out of yesterday's elections is our friends on the other side of the aisle.
And the Tea Party has already put establishment Republicans on notice that they won't be able to ignore their message either. Marco Rubio, the new Republican senator from Florida, is one of those Tea Party successors, and compromise is not part of his political makeup.
It would be a tremendous mistake to assume that last night was some sort of embrace of the Republican Party and that we are entering a Republican era. Last night was nothing more than a second chance to be the party that we claim to be and want to be. And my warning is that if we fail to do that, 2 years from now, we will be on the other end of this pendulum again. At
his post-election press conference, Marco Rubio, a Cuban-American, made a point of answering questions in both English and Spanish. Capturing the growing Latino vote is increasingly important for the major parties here, and Rubio is now being talked about as a potential Republican leader. But the Tea Party success has also given Sarah Palin's ambitions a considerable boost.
That's an earthquake. It is. It's a huge message sent. It is a shake-up.
During the campaign, Sarah Palin endorsed more than 60 Tea Party-backed candidates, and 2/3 of them went on to win. It might seem like a long way off yet, but the campaigning and positioning for 2012 is now well underway.
Michael Brissenden reporting from Washington.